Tonight, grounded planes and passenger grievances as WestJet braces for a pilot strike. Cancelled flights across the country.
We've missed a full day of travel in New York City, yeah.
The escalating impact of a labor impasse. Deep in debt, new warnings as Canadians struggle to keep up.
You've either got to increase your income or reduce your expenses, and that's not easy to do.
The painful ripple effect of rising interest rates. Plus, an astronomical discovery.
It's just close enough to its star that it might be habitable.
A new volcano-covered planet with some promising potential.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Sandy Ronaldo.
Good evening. A major Canadian airline canceled dozens of flights over fears there would be no one to fly them. The standoff between WestJet and its pilots is leaving passengers caught in the middle.
I was supposed to fly out today at 3:50, but didn't get a flight.
Already checked other alternatives, but all other flights are booked.
There's nobody there to help me. Not a person to ask a question to.
CTV's Adrian Gobriel has the latest with just a few hours left before the strike deadline.
Grounded flights and escalating anxiety.
We don't have a contingency plan. Everything's happening so fast.
As of this afternoon, the country's second largest airline has already canceled more than 100 flights.
Around 2 a.m. in the morning, I got an email.
Got an email saying canceled, and they're blaming strike.
The airline claims their decision to cancel flights comes as WestJet remains confronted with the union's unreasonable wage expectations that, if realized, would permanently damage the ability to offer low fares and competitive services to Canadians. The Canadian press has reported that WestJet's offer to pilot captains would see them earn between $300,000 and $350,000 by the end of the collective agreement's term. But the pilots' union claim the figures being floated don't tell the whole story.
It's a highly skilled, globally in-demand skill set, so it's the wages can sound high, but they're actually low if you compare it to pilots and what they're earning across the country, like considerably low, and that includes what's on offer right now from WestJet.
The labor dispute includes pilots for the company's discount carrier Swoop. South of the border, pilots for America's largest airline, Delta, recently negotiated a significant pay increase,
which include raises of 34%. So, there are pressures on, upward pressures on pilot wages, which certainly Canadian airlines are not immune from.
For now, the pressure is on thousands of passengers scrambling to try to find a way to their destination.
All other flights are either booked or it's a extremely higher price. I'm trying from Buffalo or Detroit if possible tonight. So that's the only options I have left.
The last national pilot strike in the country took place in 1998, grounding Air Canada for 13 days, costing the company $133 million. Sandy?
Okay, Adrian, thank you. Well, after months of raising interest rates, the Bank of Canada today cautioned Canadians to keep an eye on household debt. CTV's Judy Trin now on how financial stress has become a risk factor.
The Bank of Canada has aggressively raised interest rates over the past year.
We've raised rates rapidly. That was needed to control inflation.
In February 2022, the rate was at 0.25%. Now it's at 4.5%. The housing market is cooling, inflation is leveling, but there's collateral damage. More families are getting deeper into debt.
As more households renew their mortgages into the future, we will see most of them renewing at higher interest rates, which will mean higher payments.
New home buyers are using an average of 19% of their household income to pay off their mortgage. By 2026, nearly all mortgage holders will be paying between 20% to 40% more.
We are more concerned about the ability of households through this transition to manage their debts.
Another worrying sign, homeowners who bought real estate during the pandemic are now carrying 17% more credit card debt.
You're either using debt to survive and increasing the amount of debt you've got, or you're cutting back on all of those other expenses.
Many are feeling the weight.
The price increases that people are having to sustain, I think it's too much that for them to handle.
Cost of living is very high, so I think you have to make a budget.
The government has made efforts to soften the blow by offering a one-time grocery rebate of up to $467, but only for low-income families.
Our government cannot compensate every single person in Canada for the additional strain caused by high inflation and caused by high interest rates.
Even though Canada has the highest level of household debt among G7 countries, the central bank has not ruled out raising interest rates again in June. Sandy.
Okay, Judy, thank you. The wildfire crisis in Western Canada remains volatile, and with hot, dry weather expected this weekend, the worry is an even higher fire risk. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Melanie Nagy reports.
As wildfires continue to devour Alberta's landscape, there's a new warning. Unseasonably high temperatures are expected over the long weekend, and that could worsen an already volatile situation.
The fire danger is expected to be extreme across the northern parts of the province.
Hot, dry conditions can create ample fuel for fires. Like Alberta, parts of Saskatchewan have had little rain. At least 24 wildfires are now burning in the province. BC has also been experiencing record-breaking heat, causing fire activity to intensify.
So we're asking people to be very cautious with any kind of open fire.
One of the hardest hit regions has been the province's north, where several wildfires are burning near Fort St. John.
The biggest piece for us is to really take the opportunity over the next 48 hours to aggressively build some contingency lines.
Helping crews building those guards has been a shift in the wind. It's no longer pushing flames directly towards the city. Changing winds have also made a difference in Alberta's Valley View. Those forced to evacuate the town Monday were allowed back today. But for some, like Darlene Desjardins, returning has been devastating.
It's heartbreaking to see what you've worked for going up in flames.
The house belonging to Desjardins' daughter was destroyed. As for her own home of 20 years, which remains under an evacuation order, it is still standing.
We're humbled by, all the help that we've gotten. We're humbled by people not giving up, and, they're here to help us.
More than 10,000 Albertans remain evacuated. There are also hundreds in Saskatchewan and BC. For many, it could be weeks before they head home. Melanie Nagy, CTV News, Vancouver.
While the wildfires are burning across parts of Alberta, there's also an election campaign underway, and tonight was a critical leaders debate. UCP leader Danielle Smith and Alberta NDP leader Rachel Notley squared off on issues like health care.
And we don't have family doctors coming to work here in Alberta. And the reason is because Ms. Smith is doing things like referring to them as tyrants and suggesting that people who follow public health orders are Nazi sympathizers.
What I find so interesting is that Ms. Notley isn't running at all on her record from when she was premier, because she would have to admit that surgical wait times actually went up for 9 key surgeries. She'd have to admit that she didn't actually have the courage to take on the challenge of reforming healthcare.
The debate took place on the same day Alberta's ethics commissioner found Danielle Smith broke conflict of interest rules.
You were found to have broken the law in order to interfere with the system of justice.
Look, I'm a non-lawyer, and I know that I need to be able to talk to my justice minister. I'm looking forward to advice on how to be able to do that more constructively in the future. I think that's important.
Albertans will cast their votes on May the 29th. Well, Prime Minister Trudeau is in Japan for the G7 summit with all eyes on how the leaders address the war in Ukraine and China. Today, Trudeau held bilateral meetings with his Japanese counterpart. CTV's senior political correspondent Glenn McGregor is in Hiroshima, where it's already Friday morning.
Sandy, there's no other symbol of the horror of nuclear war like the memorial to the victims of the atomic bomb dropped in Hiroshima in 1945.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and other leaders are gathered here for this year's G7 summit. The focus of these meetings is on global security and specifically the increasing belligerence of 2 nuclear powers, China and Russia. The leaders will discuss further tightening sanctions in response to the invasion of Ukraine and China's looming threat towards Taiwan. Earlier, the Prime Minister was in Seoul, visiting a memorial for Canadian soldiers who fought during the Korean War and later hiked a trail through the Kapyong Valley. That's where Canadians defended a key hill despite being massively outnumbered by North Korean and Chinese forces.
Trudeau is now the longest-serving leader at the G7 table. He's expected to advocate for larger investments in green energy to lessen the world's dependence on Russian oil and gas, while also reducing emissions. Sandy.
CTV's Glenn McGregor in Hiroshima. Glenn, thank you. And as Glenn mentioned, the war in Ukraine will be on the summit agenda. Today, Kyiv's military said it turned back Russian attacks around Bakhmut. The eastern city has been pounded by heavy artillery fire. Ukraine says it's made new territorial gains ahead of an expected counteroffensive, but Russian forces claim they've made advances of their own. Now, the devastating floods in northern Italy have claimed at least 13 lives, with the discovery today of 4 more bodies. Rescue crews have been trying to reach people trapped by heavy rain and landslides. More than 10,000 have fled to higher ground. More than 4,000 farms are underwater. Well, thousands gathered in Ottawa today to say goodbye to Sergeant Eric Mueller. The Ontario provincial police officer was fatally shot during a confrontation in a small community. He is the 11th officer to die in the line of duty since September. CTV's Jeremy Sharon reports.
Amazing grace. Sergeant Eric Mueller being remembered by friends and family as a dedicated and loving family man above all else.
Above all, Eric lived to protect those he cared for the most. And although the manner of it was so senseless, we tried to take solace in knowing he died doing what he loved.
Sergeant Mueller is survived by his wife Marie-France, 21-month-old daughter Jasmine, and 8-month-old son Hugo.
As a family, they found great joy in the simple pleasures of life: gardening, cooking, baking, DIY, and especially family gatherings.
Among his peers, he was known as a leader and a mentor.
He was an intimidating-looking man, standing almost 6.5 feet tall, with a shaved head and stern look.
But also a gentle giant, known amongst his colleagues as a jokester.
He mentioned he was severely allergic to certain foods. Obviously concerned, I asked him if he had an EpiPen. He said he did not, but if anything happened to him, I had to promise him one thing, that I would never, ever, under any circumstances, give him mouth-to-mouth.
OPP Commissioner Thomas Carrick praised him for his dedication, but also raised larger questions.
We need to ask ourselves if our police officers, the very ones we rely upon for our safety and security, are not safe, then who is?
Mostly, though, there were simple stories here about a man everyone loved.
Everyone that met Eric grew to love him. And I will miss you, my friend, but I will see you again someday.
Sergeant Eric Mueller was 42. Jeremy Sherrill, CTV News.
Coming up after the break, courting change.
That's probably going to be my last year.
The game plan for an injured tennis legend, plus a key suspect scratching the surface in a shocking case of vandalism. One of the all-time greats in professional tennis revealed today that he expects to retire next year. Spain's Rafael Nadal is putting his storied career on hold to deal with a nagging injury, and that means missing a prestigious tournament he's owned over the years. CTV's Vanessa Lee explains.
At his tennis academy in Manacor, Spain, Rafael Nadal announced what fans had feared. For the first time since 2005, he will not be playing on the clay court where he's claimed a record 14 French Open titles.
Today, I'm still in a position that I am not able to feel myself ready to compete at the standards that I need to be to play at Roland Garros.
When he hoisted the trophy last year at the age of 36 while dealing with chronic foot pain, he became the oldest champion in tournament history. He is pulling out of this month's Grand Slam because of a lingering hip injury.
Physically looking like he's having some kind of a real issue, serious issue at this point.
He hasn't competed anywhere since he lost in the second round of the Australian Open in January when he was in obvious pain, and says there comes a moment when your body raises a white flag.
My ambition is to try to stop, to give myself an opportunity to enjoy next year. That's probably going to be my last year in a professional tour.
Nadal's uncertain future is another sign tennis's golden era is coming to an end. For decades, he ruled the courts alongside other stars like Novak Djokovic and Roger Federer, who retired last year. His young rivals say the French Open draw is now wide open.
I think it opens the possibility for many players, because even if he would not be, let's call it 100% physically, but he would decide to play, he would be a favorite, for sure.
Nadal says he doesn't want to set a date for his return to the tennis tour, but expects it to take months. Vanessa Lee, CTV News, Montreal.
Today we're hearing the other side of the story from the agency which took photos of Prince Harry and wife Meghan in New York on Tuesday. Backgrid USA is pushing back against the couple's claims of aggressive paparazzi, writing in a statement there was no near catastrophic car chase or near crashes. The agency defended its 4 freelance photographers, adding they had no intention of causing any distress or harm. The agency says it will be conducting an investigation into Prince Harry's allegations. And the RCMP in BC is trying to identify a woman believed responsible for vandalism at car dealerships in Port Coquitlam. Since January, the suspect, acting always at night, has keyed more than 400 vehicles at 2 different lots, with damage estimated at $500,000.
In my 15 years of policing, I have not seen this amount of vehicles being purposely damaged all at one time with one suspect.
The Mounties don't believe the incidents are related to an armed robbery at one of the dealerships in November. Still ahead, discovered just beyond our solar system, a small and rocky world bursting with volcanic activity. Excitement in the world of astronomy with the discovery of a planet the size of Earth and potentially covered in volcanoes. CTV's Heather Butts now on the implications and the Canadian connection.
The size of Earth, about 90 light years away, and likely carpeted with volcanoes. This new exoplanet was discovered with the help of Canadian astronomers.
We were super excited about this because it's like we were the only ones in the world, so my student and I, we were the only ones in the world that knew about this other exo-Earth that is out there.
Bjorn Benneke planned and supervised the study with a team at the University of Montreal. They used data from NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite and the retired Spitzer Space Telescope to discover the planet that could possibly support life.
What is particularly exciting about these Earth-sized planets, about these temperate planets, where temperatures are actually quite similar to the Earth, is that those are also the ones where we will look for life in the future. And so this planet that we have found here, it's a potential candidate for this.
Benneke says it's the first time an exoplanet shows this type of volcanic activity. It could undergo outbursts as often as Jupiter's moon Io, the most volcanically active body in our solar system.
Volcanoes are exciting because they bring things to the surface of a planet that might give the building blocks of life. And so anytime there's a volcano somewhere, people get excited.
Called LP791-18D, with ice, water, and volcanoes, astronomers picture it like Iceland.
As a nickname, gave it the name Reykjavik as the capital of Iceland.
To get a closer look, it'll likely be observed by the James Webb Telescope, the largest and most advanced ever built.
Everybody thinks of NASA when they think of space science, but here you have Canadian researchers, a Canadian university, and ultimately it's that James Webb Space Telescope, which is partly Canadian, that's going to have a closer look. So Canada has a lot to be proud about with space science.
Making way for more exciting discoveries in the future. Heather Butts, CTV News, Toronto.
The most famous space soundtrack has to be the music of Star Wars, and in Montreal, movie fans can hear it live. The 78 musicians in the Philharmonic Orchestra were in rehearsals today. They will play along with screenings of the movie Return of the Jedi this weekend. The famous score by John Williams calls for 45 percussion instruments alone. And our next story after the break calls for a tribute to a music teacher. From generations of students who sing his praises. And now a heartwarming story of life imitating art. In the 1995 film Mr. Holland's Opus, the music teacher, played by actor Richard Dreyfuss, is honored by former students with one final concert. Well, that moment has come alive for real, as CTV's Richard Madden discovered.
This tribute to a retiring music teacher has pulled heartstrings around the world in a true-to-life version of a well-known story.
There was a movie about this.
This was real life Mr. Holland's Opus. This was Mr. Stanley's Opus.
Last weekend, music teacher Jim Stanley asked former students to reunite for one final concert before his retirement and was stunned just how many showed up for an emotional musical send-off.
Shocking, surprising, mind-blowing. The fact that they were all willing to come back and show or create this tribute, if you will, absolutely filled my heart up.
What a retirement gift.
Absolutely.
For nearly 3 decades, Stanley taught piano and chorus at a high school in Cartersville, Georgia. Maggie Kuhn was his student 20 years ago and made it a priority to join the performance.
It meant the world. I just wanted to say thank you to him. We all had that connection to Stanley and the work he did. It motivated us to be our best selves because he was working in his passion.
Her post of the rehearsal went viral, with more than 9 million views and counting, plus thousands of comments about the impact of the music and teachers who make a difference.
There have been story after story after story of how he's changed their lives with the music that he's instilled in them, and they wanted to give something back. What a wonderful way to go out of your career to see how much you were loved.
This is something that people connect with. It's a positive in the world. And I realize to some extent the legacy that I'm leaving behind here, as far as going forward, a wonderful memory forever, a forever memory.
Lasting memories for a teacher and his generations of students who were taught the powerful gift of music. Richard Madden, CTV News, Washington.
And thank you for sharing your time with us this Thursday. I'm Sandy Ronaldo for Omar and all of us at CTV National News. Good night until tomorrow.